Oh man. Oh man. I am excited for this one. Hello and welcome to a helpful episode of the Drywall podcast. Why am I excited? Well, we have once again Steph Abbott of Teak Interiors back on the show after almost a year, and a lot can happen in a year. Steph now has over 1 year of sobriety under her belt, and we talk about that. But we also do a deep dive into some serious Instagram strategy and how a little research helps go a long way.
Yeah, so when I first started on Instagram, I was extremely invested in it. I did a ton of research over Instagram Reels, YouTube, whatever it was. Like I'm talking hours on learning how Instagram works, little tips and tricks on how to advance your page a little more kind of thing. So I did learn a few things that people might be missing that are just little super easy tips and tricks that could help you in the long run.
We do talk a lot about the early days of how Steph got into the finishing trade, but also how far she's come and some highlights of this last year. Most importantly, the Surrey project and her trip out to Resarge with Gilbert Taping and Phil from PRC to pitch some higher ups with Home Depot. If you liked her first episode 68 on the Drywall podcast with Teak, you are going to love this one. Today's episode of the Drywall podcast is brought to you by Fresco Harmony, making walls better since 2004. It's hard to believe that we've been coloring walls for over 20 years, but we have, and now you can too if you head over to CSR's website, CSR Building. You can get Fresco Harmony there, or if you're in the United States, check us out on www.frescoharmony.com. If you'd like to be a sponsor on the Drywall podcast, you can reach out to me directly, info@frescoharmony.com. I would be happy to discuss that opportunity with you. We have fresh, new, exciting episodes like the one you are about to hear every Friday on your favorite platforms such as Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcast, YouTube, and now you can watch this episode in its entirety on our YouTube page. If you head over there, Drywall Podcast, hit the subscribe button. That would be awesome. But for now, Steph Abbott, you know her, you love her. Teak Interiors on the 111th episode of the Drywall Podcast. Let's get into it. There she is.
How's it going?
Oh, it's a going.
Nice shirt.
Yeah, I like this one. It might be my favorite. I don't know. I do get a lot of compliments on the Teak hat when I wear it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you wear it. Thank you.
It's not my, this style of hat is not my style. But this is the only one of this style that I wear with the flat brim. I'm more of like the trucker style with a, more curved brim, but
yeah. No, you pull it off just fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have Steph Abbott. Of course, if you don't know who she is, you've been living under a rock. Teak Interiors out of Red Deer still, Alberta.
Yeah.
I have my notes from last time.
Good job.
It was October 24th. Last time you were on the show?
Almost a year ago.
Yep. You had 4,000. It says 4,000 plus. I imagine that's followers. Where are we at now?
I'm just shy of 50 on Instagram and I'm at like 54 on TikTok now.
It's fucking bullshit.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. So a lot has happened. I finally got to meet Teak in Surrey. There has been many adventures. You've been to many different places. I would like to give a background um, uh, on your story. Maybe we could touch on the background before we get into why you wanted to come back onto the podcast, which I'm super grateful for. Yeah, so let's go into sort of the archives a little bit and talk about how you got into the trades, first generation, all that stuff, like how this came to be.
Yeah, I started, I was 19 years old. I was working at an old folks home. I did that through grade 11 and grade 12 to make money. I wanted to pay for my own car and insurance and fuel and stuff. So I figured I'd work at an old folks home, and then once I graduated, I wanted to get out into the world more. And my uncle Jim owned a drywall company, A-Tech Drywall, out of Red Deer, Alberta. And I messaged him and I asked him if he had a broom I could push. I was just looking to get into the industry, and he hired me as a fire taper, and I started up above grid um, in Red Deer, and he came by and saw my fire taping, and he's like, okay. Most of the guys were putting it on by their hands, and I've never liked it on my hands. I don't know. I've just always been like that. Like I just like using a knife. So anyways, he came by and I had it all buttoned up nice and tight, and he's like, okay, we got to get you on the walls. And that's when I got my first hawk and trowel. So within weeks I was on hawk and trowel. And
Okay. So he liked the way you were doing it.
yeah,
So how were you doing it?
I was just doing it really good. I don't know, nice and tight and not half-assed. And it was just
Right.
super clean. So I think he saw how clean it was and thought I could go below grid.
I'm going to ask you this straight out. Do you think women are better finishers than men?
After the experience that I've got over this past year, absolutely not. Like I've worked with some men that are absolutely amazing finishers.
Okay, all right. I
But
would say it's probably too. I used to have a friend that would say it's a human condition, you know. So I don't think it is men or women. I think just like anything, I think you're good, you know, or you're not as good. I think it's a fluid. You can always be getting better, but not. I don't think it's really men or women. You know,
yeah,
there's more men, so you're gonna have a larger amount of really good men finishers, but the women finishers I've seen are really good, you know.
yeah, for sure. I think like in the end, it just comes down to the amount of care you put into the finishing details. Like anyone can run a box, a trowel, whatever it is, right? But when it comes down to those finishing touches, that's what really matters on the quality of your work.
Such as finishing touches.
Yeah, like the last bit of knife work up in
Yeah.
your three ways, or the where your beads meet in doorways. If you've got beaded doorways, like you got to give it the final little kiss to like give that really good quality that your customer
Hmm.
is looking for. And then like also sanding. Sanding's massive.
Which is your favorite?
Oh my God, I hate it so much.
Offline, we talk on the Drywall podcast about how great drywall finishing is and all this stuff, but offline and maybe behind the scenes, I get to also interview people on maybe aspects of the drywall finishing that absolutely suck. and you and I've talked about that a little bit. Real quick, we did you reach out to me? What was the purpose for wanting to come back onto the Drywall pod? And if you don't know, the two part episode podcast, like where I have people back on the podcast, is pretty rare. I try not to do that. I always try to have fresh people on the podcast, but if it's been a while, I'm super happy to have people back onto the podcast, especially Steph. What was your inspiration for maybe wanting to come back?
I think that I'm hoping to help motivate people to give everything they have into investing in their Instagram page. Like for me, for example, like I went all in with my posting and it really paid off. Like I had a phenomenal year since I saw you. I met amazing people and had amazing opportunities, and it all came from Instagram.
Yeah, and if you don't know too, I say this a lot, and I try not to have favorites, but Teek's first interview, I forget what number, but that episode is one of my favorites. It was kind of raw.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some of that stuff too, where you've gone, if you don't mind, where you've gone in your journey with recovery too. We don't have to talk about it. We can cut it out, like whatever. But I think you were pretty raw in that experience as well.
Yeah.
Uh, a year ago. It's different. It's different now, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
look good. You look good. Not that
Thank
you
you.
didn't look good back then, but people change. And I think it's important to talk about on the Drywall podcast. I'm open to talking about my recovery as well. There's other people that have been on the podcast where we talked about our recovery too. So there's a lot to get into. Going back to the Instagram page. Now, I'm salty. I'm like, you know what? I have Drywall Fresco Harmony. It's like cool colored mud system. I got the Drywall podcast. I post maybe not as much as I should. I post a lot. I try to post. I have three different pages, but I get salty around like I've only got like 1,200 followers, or whatever. And Teek's got 50,000. A lot of that is personality too, I think. But let's talk about your success around that and how maybe somebody like me, and you feel free to give me advice too, as we're also giving advice to other people out in the World Wide Web. Um, what would you suggest to somebody really trying to branch out? Maybe they're flying under the radar. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when I first started on Instagram, I was extremely invested in it. I did a ton of research over Instagram Reels, YouTube, whatever it was. Like I'm talking hours on learning how Instagram works, little tips
Yeah,
and tricks on how to advance your page a little more kind of thing. So I did learn a few things that people might be missing that are just little super easy tips and tricks that could
totally.
help you in the long run. So
Yeah,
a lot
I
of it,
never did any of that shit. I just post stuff and I expect to have 50,000 followers. That's probably not a good angle.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I think knowledge is power on that for sure. Like, I just went off of people who had a ton of followers and I just went to see like, how did you do it kind of thing. And so I think categorizing your videos are super important. So, like for example, my niche is drywall finisher, right? So in my profile, it says right on my profile, drywall finisher. So whatever your niche is, you want your page to be easily identified. So I think I've even got it in my actual name. It might be there a couple times. And then also to connect with that, I always, every single video, I use the exact same hashtags every single time. And like, for example, one of the first ones I use is drywall finisher, right? Make the connection from your video to your page. And that seemed to help a lot with categorizing it. And then, so like I said, I use the same hashtags on every single video. So I copy and pasted them into my notes in my phone. So every time I post a video, I go into my Instagram note, copy and paste and put it right on that video.
You
And
know what's funny about that? I've thought about doing that. I fucking write them out still every time. And it's so,
yeah,
and
that
I've
takes
thought
a
about
long
doing
time.
that. I just never have. That's so smart. How many hashtags, and do you think they're really that benefit? You think people are still like following hashtags?
I think so to a point. Like if you type in drywall finisher and it'll tell you all your followers, like the amount of followers you have that are following that hashtag to give you
Shut
an
the fuck
idea.
up. Really? So
Yeah.
you can organize your hashtags based on how many of your followers are following specific hashtags. So if my followers aren't following drywall, just drywall, because that's one of mine, then like, I mean, I probably wouldn't have as many followers on the Fresco Harmony hashtag, although we have a few.
Yeah.
I would still want to post that because it's Fresco Harmony and I want to
Yeah.
bolster that hashtag, right?
Absolutely. And another thing is like when you're picking your hashtags, you'll be able to see the traction that that hashtag has. Like the majority, I max my hashtags out. Like I don't care, full send. I've got 30 hashtags every single video.
Okay.
All of those hashtags are up high 100,000 or millions in the millions of uses
Okay.
because that's just better for you, right? Like if you use a hashtag that has 10,000 uses, it's not going to go as far as something that's used 5.6 million times, right? Because it's viewed
Right.
more. So
Right.
all my hashtags are up near the millions is what I've got.
Okay. Okay. Like the drywall podcast too. I use a drywall podcast and just drywall podcast hashtags. Those hashtags aren't going to have as many followers, but it's my page. So in that instance, I would use it. But outside of that, like using drywall or drywall finisher, or even drywall nation is a good one.
Yeah,
They have tons of followers. Um,
nice.
yeah.
I think it's important though for you to put Fresco Harmony hashtags or the Drywall Podcast hashtags because when someone searches Fresco Harmony in the top bar, they'll find anything that is hashtag,
Right. Okay.
right? So
I think of hashtags and I think of like, ooh, somebody follows this hashtag so that my video will show up in their feed, and that does happen. But more importantly, they will, yeah, if they're searching for your business, so it would be good for people to use their hashtag, their business hashtag, right? In their, I mean, you probably use Teak Interiors, hashtag Teak Interiors. No?
I never have. I actually probably should have this whole time for the hundreds of videos I've put out, but
Yeah.
I think I'm on the FYP, and that's another thing. Like if people are looking for
FYP, you're speaking in tongues. What is that?
the For You page, so if you go on Instagram and you press um the search button, all these people on the search button, right? I press search, all these people are on the FYP For You page. So that is extremely important, I found,
The
using the
fuck? Where'd you find out about the FYP page, and how come I don't know about it?
research.
God damn it.
No, just like I
Why didn't
spent
you
a
go to
long
college?
time.
Why didn't you go to college, Teak?
I don't know. I spent a lot of time on investing in my company
Smart.
for Instagram. And so that was my point of the FYP thing is if you're putting a video out there, hashtag FYP or for you or for you page, all of those hashtags are in the billions. And like I
Okay.
taught like T-Mac taping that, and if you cruise the FYP, he's all over it, right? You get yourself out there and that gets you more views, right? Because drywall is so satisfying. People just doink, there you are, follow.
Yeah. You know what? It makes me think of Jay Wall too. But he's
Love him.
did you listen to the Jay Wall episode by chance?
I
It's
did. The
so
milk
funny.
crates.
It's so
Like you
funny.
guys had me roaring. I
Yeah.
think I was
Yeah.
sanding that day too. I'm like, I hate my life, but these guys are funny.
Yeah. Yeah. And the penis shrubs. Not to forget the penis
Uh,
shrubs. Like that was gold. But his content is so unique and it's so funny. Like I watched him go from TikTok to Instagram and just, you know, also, I think not only does it work to have strategic approaches to your page, but also have good content or creative content or unique. I think I have unique content, but I'm not doing the footwork to get the follows. Like I just rely on Cam.
oh yeah, Cam's last video was so good with that brown fresco wall.
I know. And I've made so many like swirl videos, but like I don't get the love that Cam gets. And I mean, maybe it's the one wheel, maybe it's his mustache. I don't know. I don't know.
I think a lot of it comes down to editing too. Like you got to keep your frame super short so you
Yeah.
don't lose your audience's attention.
Yep. I was talking or listening to Brian Kitchen was talking about strategy around editing video. And 3 seconds. Like you don't want each frame to be over 3 seconds. And I kind of use that rule now. A very smart, and you can tell, man, the video just clicks along and different angles too. Lots
Yeah.
of different angles. And then when Cam was here, I was watching him video and I stole a lot of his methods where he's moving in, across the wall,
Yeah.
like that kind of shit.
Yeah. Anything
Um,
satisfying and lighting is so important. Like if I post a
okay.
video, my lighting and wearing bright colors, like my shoes help a lot, wearing bright, bold, like I wear a lot of troll clothing and it's black and white clothing and it's eye-catching, right? Like between that good lighting, like if I was gonna say if I post a video and my lighting is garbage, it won't have the traction nearly compared to something that has really good lighting.
Okay. All right. So you're not getting so many followers. I'm circling back because you're a woman in the trades. Partially.
Yeah, I think that there's obviously a part of it that is like I think that seeing a woman, like the job I was at last week, the guy's like, yeah, I'm surprised you're a woman, like rare breed, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but I'm really
Yeah.
not. There's actually a ton of us women out there that are
Yeah.
posting on Instagram. Like, it's really not that rare in 2024 compared to what it was like 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's forever evolving, but do I think that that's a contributing factor to my success? Probably, but do I show up with integrity and morals? I try to do my best every time, right? I don't
Right.
want my
Right.
ass hanging out or my boobs hanging out. Like that's just not my style. I
Right.
post to show my work ethic and my skills and I'm trying to teach people how to drywall. Pick up a trowel. You
Yeah.
know, it's not that hard. You just have to be invested in it, you know? And some of my most viral videos, you can't even see my body in it. It's just the
Right.
satisfying factor of it.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. Going back let's go back to the timeline, 19 years old. Why didn't you go to college? How come you're working at the, I don't know if it's PC to call it an old folks home, but that's where you were.
It was an old folks' home. It was old
Probably.
folks and they lived there. It was their house. They were so cute.
That seems like it was probably a good fit for you.
I
You
loved it.
you did. You liked it. Why did you go from the old folks home to working with Uncle for a tech?
Well, I was always looking for a challenge and wanting to grow. Like if I feel stagnant in my life, like I have to set new goals, switch it up a little bit, get uncomfortable and scared because I know when I'm scared and out of my comfort zone, that's when I'm growing. That's when I'm thriving, kind of thing. And then like growing up on a farm, working on equipment with my dad, being out in the elements all the time with the cows, with the machinery, passing my dad wrenches, holding the flashlight till the sun goes down in the shop, you know, like growing up like that. The old folks home was a little bit too clean and easy for me. I needed to be challenged in life, and that was challenging. It was scary when I was 19
Yeah.
walking in there. Woo.
Walking into where?
We were building an old folks home.
So walking into, and I know what you mean because I remember it too. The first day, walking into, it was a commercial for the
Yeah.
Union, like in downtown Portland. I didn't know where to park, and you walk into the job, and there's like 12 journeymen. You're like 10 minutes early, but they've been there for fucking 20 minutes sitting on buckets drinking coffee, you know.
Yes.
And then you're like,
Yeah.
I had a plastic pan, and they passed it around and like took pictures. Well, we didn't have phones back then, but you know, they made fun of me
Yeah.
instantly. And yeah.
That's
Um
exactly what it was like doing
yeah, I was
their
like,
toolbox meeting before filling out their hazard assessment.
yeah, whatever they do in the Union. Those guys were dicks. God, I don't know how I survived there like 6 months. I was just as big a dick, so it didn't matter. But you know, I was a cocky young, I think maybe 20, 21-ish, very
Yeah.
young. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
intimidating walking in there like with all those big men and
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Especially for a woman. And so but it was your uncle, so you had a little bit of cushion there. How
He
big?
was never on site, like ever. I was thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, yeah, just okay. You want to push a broom? Go work with these guys. Frank will tell you what to do.
Yeah. Never smoked so many cigarettes in my life.
Yeah, are you still smoking? Do you smoke?
No, I haven't
No?
smoked in a year.
Shut the fuck up. Congratulations. That's a big one. Nicotine's a big one. And
Yeah.
we can talk about that a little later. Cool. So how many people were you working with at that time?
Oh, like with ATEC on that
Yeah.
site?
Yeah.
There was probably between drywallers and finishers. There was about, I'd say like 6 to 8 of us.
Okay.
There wasn't very many.
And then were you guys running all the tools and everything? With that experience, did you learn all the facets of drywall, or did you have to go and learn on your own?
Yeah, we did everything by hand. All
Beautiful.
other hand tapers. I was a hand taper for the
Hello,
first.
carpal tunnel. Hey, I'm 19 and I have carpal tunnel.
Yeah, I'm surprised I don't, because I continued for the next 14 years doing it by hand until I got a tube and started applying the mud with tube, but still everything else was by hand.
Didn't someone show you the tube recently? No.
Like Can-Am, I had a tube for years and I never used it because hand taping was all that I knew. And like flushers, I don't know, they made me nervous. I perfected doing angles by hand. So I just didn't use it. And then I did a huge job out by Gull Lake. And I was like, you know what? I'm using this tube. And that's kind of how it all started with being sponsored was I posted a video of me applying the mud for taping with the tube and Wolfgang saw me and then we met up after that and it all took off.
Did you meet with Gilbert Taping over there?
Oh yeah, we're tight.
You and Gilbert, those girls are so sweet. Like, forget
Yeah,
about it.
they're
Uh,
phenomenal
yeah,
finishers.
they're cool. Okay, so hand taping.
Yeah.
So, what was your experience after you uh ran the flusher on that job? You were just like, why the fuck did it take me so long to use the flusher?
Are you kidding me? I still struggle with the flusher. Like
You
three ways
still-
are freaking hard. And like, I don't care
Yeah.
what anyone says, they're fucking hard. They are.
Okay. All right. Well, and there's a invention called the three-way that goes into the corner. Like, why don't you use those?
I have them. I haven't used them yet. I'm honestly like, even when it comes down to like recording, a lot of the time I don't record anything because I have a one-track mind. Get there and get the job done. Right?
Me
So
too. Me too.
it's hard to stop and record. It's hard to stop and do a three-way like that. You know, I've just been running my bazooka lately, putting it right into the corner, and I've been like really hyper focusing on perfecting my three ways. And like I do them wet. So
Yeah.
like I'm trying to get really good at that right now. So I'm
Yeah.
just
I
focusing on that rather than like
Are you solo right now?
well, I've got Tristan that comes and works with me. She was busy with the wedding season and all of that. And then the last couple jobs we worked on, I didn't even.
Weddings. What is she, a fucking wedding planner? Does she moonlight as a wedding planner?
No, I think she just has friends in a life.
She has girlfriends who get married all the time.
Yeah, and siblings.
Wedding season. She's got a whole season.
Yeah,
Um, Tristan. How come I haven't seen Tristan? Is she on the videos?
yeah, she's been on my page.
Okay,
And
I'll have to
how
look
can you
closer.
miss her? She's got bright pink hair.
All right. Well,
Long, bright pink hair.
it's been a year for me too.
Yeah, tell me about
Yeah,
it.
lots of things, lots of things. Okay. So you're rolling along and you have a beautiful family too, and we could talk about that too, but you're rolling along, you're hanging out with these surly drywall finisher people. You're getting into the thick of it a little bit. Um, when did you know that like maybe like this whole alcohol thing was becoming an issue? Like what was it for you that was like made you start thinking about like I wonder what life would be like if I stopped? You know,
Yeah.
that's an interesting point in a person's life, and I've crossed that bridge, and it interests me, and it might interest our listeners out there as well.
Yeah, for me, I just feel like, I don't know. First off, I feel like as long as I was drinking, I had the feeling like I was never really growing up, not living to my full potential kind of thing. And then after I had the twins,
Okay.
they're three now. When I went away to treatment, they were like two. They just turned two, and that was really hard leaving them, but I knew it was best for the long run. But anyways, so I think a little bit of postpartum played into that. And
Yeah.
then also just like trauma through my life, carrying that, never dealing with it, masking it with alcohol, you know, just basically taking the easy way out and just living a fun life when my priorities needed to be shifted, you know, like
Sure.
being a mom first was way more important and my company was way more important and my mental health mainly was way
Yeah.
more important. So I think a lot of it comes down to my mental health was suffering and I was drinking to feel better when it was just making everything worse.
Okay. And you were, but I mean, did you get sober like through pregnancy and stuff? How
Oh
was that?
yeah.
Yeah, you were sober through pregnancy.
Yeah.
Um, did that make you look at it?
Like what do you mean?
Like, so you get pregnant, you don't drink. Like, does that make you look at like, oh, life is better not drinking?
I think that's a completely different chapter in your life, right? Like you have different motivations at that time. Like your mind is somewhere completely
Okay.
different, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously I didn't drink when I was pregnant with my kids, but once they came out, like it was like
Game
no
on.
time was lost.
Right, because that's like a mama bear type thing where, something natural kicks in where you're just like
Yeah.
all about protecting this child. Okay. So, what was it that made you so you decided to stop? What did you do? Did you call somebody? Did you call the AA hotline?
No. No. I like
But
obviously,
you went to treatment.
oh yeah.
So not and just if you're listening, not everybody goes to treatment to get sober and clean. I didn't. Some people can just make a decision and go to start going to meetings or whatever. Some people do cold turkey and
Yeah.
stop. If you go to treatment, that means maybe you feel like you can't stop on your own, but you weren't court ordered or anything like that. You had this lightning bolt epiphany and you were like, I'm gonna stop. I need treatment. Is that a conversation you have with your husband?
Oh yeah, me and Derek, we weren't married. We were just common law. Like at that time we
Okay,
were together, we had split up 2 years, almost 2 years at that point before that, but we still lived in the same house and we just co-parented together. And that
okay,
carried on for a whole nother year after I left treatment. But me and Derek, like, we're rock solid. And yeah, like,
cool.
obviously, he knew that there was something wrong. But the thing with addiction is you hide it, right?
Sure.
You hide it, you're in denial. But for me, I was just getting carried away with my friends, and I had an epiphany that if I didn't get my shit together, something bad was gonna happen. And a light bulb went off, and I listened to it because nothing like that's ever happened to me before. Getting a sign like that, and like I didn't want to put my kids or my life in jeopardy. So I think a lot of addiction is denial. I'm like, no, I'm fine. Like, I don't have a
Yeah.
problem. But once I got there and started getting help, like everything started to make sense. And I knew I was exactly where I needed to be.
Okay. How long were you in treatment?
42 days.
42 days. That's a shitload.
It's crazy. It's such a wild lot. It's a wild ride going to treatment, like
Yeah.
living people in that atmosphere. Like it was terrifying, but I think like it really puts like life into perspective too. Like one of my best friends there was a man, he worked in a wood mill in BC. And we used to walk laps around the treatment center every single morning, and we got to know each other. And it was kind of cool because, like, in real life, like outside of treatment, I would have never been friends with him. You know what I mean? But being there and being raw and vulnerable, and just everyone's there to try to get better and move into the grow into the person that they always wanted to be but didn't know how. And that's the nice thing about treatment is they fill your toolbox right up,
Right,
which is
right.
what I needed, and like counseling too. I went to counseling every single day. I missed one out of the 42 days. I went 41 days to counseling. Like I did a deep dive into my life traumas and worked on it.
Well, and that's conducive to your research for like Instagram. Like you kind of you took it on as like this research project where instead of Instagram, you're researching yourself and like, how can I get better? How can I like dig into maybe you mentioned past trauma. So I think people don't realize too that like it's a symptom, like the addiction is a symptom of like this underlying stuff. I'm not good enough. Maybe I was abused. Maybe, I have all this baggage that I don't want to look at. Once I get clean, there's either like two choices you can use, or you can really dig into that trauma, these things that are can hold us back.
Yeah.
And that's where the steps sort of comes in. So if you don't know, that's where the steps of recovery, that these are just tools, another tool to help clear away the wreckage so that we can live free, wonderful. Life still sucks a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's like it sucks way worse with that shit, you
Yeah,
know.
for sure, 100%. Like any mind-altering substance is not serving you, right? It's not going to help you grow at all. And like through working the steps, it also, like, I think they should do the steps in school, like grade 12. I really do. Like, they could take all the God wording out of it and keep it more
Hmm.
like neutral.
Yeah.
But I think that it is extremely beneficial that if you have anything that you need to work through in your life, you could pick up a step book and make your steps about that issue or something
Hmm.
regarding something along those lines and work through it. Figure out why, figure out who, what, where, when, why, figure out your side of the situation, the role that you played in it, like I think a lot of people go into the victim mentality and place the blame on everyone around them and don't take ownership for their own shit. And through the steps, it
Yeah.
opens your
Yeah.
eyes that you are not a saint. Like you have done wrong and how to go about making amends and all that stuff. It's beautiful. It's great. It
It
changed my life.
is.
I'm so happy I went and I learned all of that. And I'll continue doing it because life happens, right? Life on life's terms. And that, like you were saying, life still sucks fucking right. It's like you feel all your big feelings now and you
Yeah.
have to face them head on. Like you
No
can't
hiding.
mask that with
Yeah.
weed or alcohol. Like you have to feel your big feelings, but that's when life shows up and drives up, like how are you going to respond rather than react? That's what I'm focusing on. Like having 3 kids, it is extremely overstimulating and I don't want to get upset with them, right? I want to validate their feelings and get outside of myself and try to have like a healthy, happy home rather than being overstimulated and frustrated, which is getting me nowhere.
Yeah. Very
But that's what
smart.
like that's what I learned through the steps is just how to navigate life.
It's wise. It's wise. So I mean, you're a completely different person. Maybe you don't notice or you do notice. I don't know how long it's been since you listened to our last episode. You're a totally different person now than you were on the last. Maybe part of that was nerves, but you were pretty,
I
you were
was
pretty,
nervous.
you were pretty fresh into it.
Yeah, so I got clean on June 5th, so July, August, September, October. So I was 4 months clean when I came on your podcast.
Okay.
So 11
Yeah.
months ago. Yeah, I've had a lot of growth
Yeah.
in that time. But that's
Yep.
like that was the whole point of me going, right? Like I wasn't accepting how I was showing up. Like I still had my company and I was
Yeah.
still a mom and everything, but I was also kind of lost in it. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know who I was. And like today I'm proud of who I am, but it takes a shit ton of work and you have to be willing to do it, And like it's the same with like the Instagram or TikTok, like if you invest yourself and like really do your research and work on yourself and work on bettering yourself and your skills, like it'll pay off.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it changes too. Like life things happen, I mean, going through a divorce, like
Yeah.
19 years sober, like sucks. Like I want to drink, I want to use, leaning but then I lean back on the things that I know from all that time. Um, the toolbox, so to speak, uh, that you have to lean on. So, you though had after you got invited to series, some of these, let's talk about some of the cool stuff that's been happening since the last time that you were on the show. And thank you so much for being open and honest about the recovery stuff. I think it's very cool in this community to talk about if people are willing to talk about it. So really, really appreciate that. And you look amazing. Like your demeanor, everything looks different. Um, let's talk about some of the things that have happened since then. Yeah, Siri, sponsorships. Where do you want where do you want to start? What was like the first thing? I think was it Siri, but you did stuff before that. Was it Can-Am? What was going on?
Yeah, I've hung out with Can-Am. Just to follow up with our last conversation, thank you for your kind words. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate your support. And like that was the thing about going to Surrey was I was stepping outside of my comfort zone big time. Like I like for years worked alone. So to go in and work with all those people was kind of overwhelming in
Yeah.
that sense. But
Yeah.
I felt a lot of comfort when you were there because you get me, right? Like I'm a little more quiet. Like you and Sean pick up on me a little bit more than others, like get real quiet and like I'm in my head, right? Like there's a shit ton going on. So, but yeah, just I appreciate your support. It means a lot to me. But yeah, went to Surrey and that was fun. Yeah, I've hung out with Wolfgang a couple times. We met up with the Gilberts. This was before Surrey in Red Deer and hung out, and that was nice. I really appreciate the support from Faye and Wolfgang. Always, they're such kind, beautiful
Hmm.
people. Like Faye, I had them over for dinner one night, and Faye baked a pie, and she's just such a beautiful person. I love them so much. But yeah, and then we took off to Surrey. I jumped in the truck with the Gilberts. We drove there. That was a long drive. And
You got to know Allison and Kayla a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah. Well, I've become quite close with Allison over this past year. She's always extremely supportive and kind, and we talk over
Yeah.
text and stuff. Kayla's a little more quiet, but I got to know her a little bit more in Surrey, and I love her. She's so sweet and kind, and like just like every bone in her body is just a good person,
Yeah.
easy to get along with, and she's just down for the flow, and she's a phenomenal finisher. I have a
Hmm.
shit ton of respect for Kayla.
Yeah, those girls are like nose to the grindstone when they're finishing.
Oh yeah.
Another aspect of Siri was navigating the personalities, the diversity of personalities within that crew. A
Yeah.
lot of great people, and you know, there's people like you gravitate towards, and people maybe you don't jive so well with, but it was interesting. I mean, the vibe when I got there was weird because you guys were like 3 days in and it was
Oh,
stress. It was stressful. Like people were stressed and they're like, where's the corner bead? And and I was like, hey, I'm here to have fun,
yeah.
and everybody's like, no, we got to get this fucking job done. The Gilberts are upstairs with Danny, Teek's over here, Cam, and Chad's putting on corner bead. But you guys like pulled together and then rewatching the videos, it's very interesting to see how Aaron did it. It's super cool to watch different people's methods. If you don't know, Columbia Tools is running a video series on the Siri project where several finishers came together and they're taking a look at how each finisher approaches different steps to the finishing process. It's very cool. and Teak was a part of that. So tell me a little bit. You were withdrawn a little bit. Like you were nervous. I could tell. About working with everybody, getting your scope done. Uh, but you liked it. You had fun. I mean, tell me about your experience a little bit at Siri.
Yeah, it was a really good experience. Like, I feel super grateful to be a part of it. And I think a lot of it was like looking around and being like, how did I get here? Like, how is this a thing? Like, especially when we walked in the doors. Well, we met Aaron, and that was like a bucket list item for me. Like,
Yeah.
the finisher that taught me pretty much everything I know. He was like big into Colombia, and I always saw it around, right? Like I used to wipe the tapes behind the bazooka. And so like the bazooka to me was like amazing, right? I'm like, oh, one day I'm gonna run that thing. Like,
Yeah.
so to meet Aaron, I was like, wow, like how is this real life? I couldn't believe
Yeah.
it.
And
And then
he's such a nice guy.
he's so cool. He's so much fun. Like,
Yeah.
definitely a bro for sure.
Yeah, and an excellent video maker too, I might add. Like a content creator like in his own right with the takeover of Columbia Tools by Fresco. That whole video was super fun. And just the like creative, his creative marketing mind. You get to see that firsthand. You get to see how they work and meeting Caden and their team
Yeah.
super cool for me too. Like watching
Yeah.
those guys work was just really impressive.
That video was so fun making, and like I'm
Yeah,
so glad that we didn't do it till the job was done. So it was like finally we could all just like have fun and let off our like quirky side with making the video and just
yeah,
having a great time. Like we did go golf karting and not golf karting, go karting, and that
yeah,
was really fun too. You friggin' T-boned me. Like I swear
yeah.
to God, you broke my back.
Yeah, I was going
Fucking
really
smoked
fast.
me.
I was going
I
really
was like
fast.
turning a corner and boom,
I
you like
know,
you
I
did
know.
not take the corner. You just full send straight right in.
Well, I mean, people got a sense of how competitive I am, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was so
But yeah, there, Danny's competitive. The competitiveness was there as finishers. All of the unique personalities that we have as finishers. So it's like a community. We're all comrades, and we're all super competitive. The Gilberts. Like I was like, oh, you should try this level 5 mixer. It's like I use this. No, 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 dude. We use the boomerang. Like.
yeah.
um and just other things like that. It was pretty funny, and people doing and trying new things. Was that the first time you had used the bazooka?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who
Yeah,
was teaching? Was Danny teaching you on the bazooka?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Danny was there and Sean was there. So we had our own individual bedrooms and we had to finish it with the technique that we use back home. So, like for example, Sean used the bazooka, Danny used the bazooka,
Yeah.
the
Gilbert's did
girl,
the slop box.
yeah, the shit box. And then I used the tube and like basically hand finished the whole thing.
Okay. All right.
So we had that, and then we had outside the bedrooms upstairs to do. So it was me, Danny, and the Gilberts upstairs, and then me and Sean, and one day worked on, or 2 days worked on the art room upstairs, and the Gilberts put a coat on that as well. And then all the other guys were downstairs working on that all together. So then when it came to the garage, that's what they used for us to, anyone who hasn't learned a tool yet, jump in the
Okay.
garage and let's learn it. So that's where I
Okay.
learned the bazooka, the throttle box. Like Cam taught me how to box flats and butts and then finish them with a knife all at one time rather than box
Oh.
your flats and then let it dry, box your butts. He showed me like a way more efficient way to Because
Cool.
like hawk and trowel, I finish all that at one time. It's no
Okay.
problem.
Yeah.
But running a machine all four ways into one, because they use butt board on that
Yeah.
job, which I'm also,
I've heard it be called railroading when you finish them, when you finish butts and bands at once, you railroad.
yeah, Cam, so good at that. He
Yeah, I
taught
bet.
me how to button it all together. And yeah, so then I got my bazooka, like just fast forwarding a little bit, and that helped with my confidence so much because it's intimidating grabbing the bazooka, the auto tape or whatever you want to call it. Like a lot of people are
Yeah,
like, it's an auto taper, but I grew up it being called a bazooka. Like I've
me
heard you
too.
call it the zoo, and I really
Yeah,
like that.
running the zoo. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was intimidated too. I remember when I first started running it, and after a little bit, man, I was like, it was my favorite thing to do very quickly.
Yeah, it becomes like a no-brainer thing. I'm like, you idiot, why didn't you do this sooner? Like you wasted so much time. But one thing I'm like, I'm fully honest about things I struggle with. Like I struggle with like three ways still from like going from hand finishing to finishing with semi-automatic tools. But one thing I do struggle with the bazooka is running the inside tapes. Like I just can't get to that corner over there and not be a foot off this corner over here by the time I get over to that corner. And I like
Yeah,
start with a little tail and still like hope for
yeah.
the best. And it always breaks. So I'm trying really
Yeah,
hard.
it depends on the span of it just depends on the span that you're running and the length of the tail that you leave. But at the halfway point, it stops pulling at a certain point. So, there's a length of tail that is pretty sufficient, but if it's a small span, you don't want to leave too long a tail
Yeah.
because then you're cutting those freaking tapes, man. You don't want to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And then it takes like the efficiency out of it, right?
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. That's so funny. Yes, when I got to Siri, you guys were up in that little art room. And just for our listeners, this house was not an easy house.
Oh my
It was like a
God.
hard ass house,
It
like,
was.
chamfer bead and returns on all the windows and miles of bead. Like Chad said, he was just doing corner bead for days. And then I bring this corner bead and Sean's like, "You're putting this on." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm doing fresco." Sorry, guys. I don't touch that white mud stuff. Um, uh, which is not true. Um, yeah, and then we struggled a little bit to put on. We had the last box of Inside 90 in existence, and then we were trying to figure out how to cut it. I had to call Trim Techs to figure out and talk to like Noe or one of their experts and be like, how do you cut this stuff to get a square inside corner? And
Yeah.
they told me they were super helpful, and we figured it out and wrestled through it.
Yeah, some of that stuff is friggin' tough, right? Sean said that that was the first time him and Cam ever got frustrated working together was doing that specialty beat. And like we're so far into the project already.
Yeah,
Like we already had it all second coded, I think, by the
yeah.
time you showed up and then for
Yeah.
them to
And
jump on.
okay, and I would have been there on time. The job got pushed like 8 times. So the last time it got pushed, my sister was visiting me, and it was like she left on Monday and I got to her house. I drove all of this trim up to Washington. I drove 22 hours to her house and met her the next day. She flew out of Albuquerque, and then I had dinner with her the next night. Um,
Yeah, that's crazy. That was a huge drive for you to take.
Yeah, it was good. It was like some introspection, and I hadn't done a road trip like that in a long time, and it was good for me. So after Siri, what did you've done some adventures since, right? You've done some adventures with, sorry, look at Siri. Siri thinks I'm talking to her. So after Surrey, you had some more adventures. Let's talk about those. You did one Richard's.
Yeah,
You guys say Richard, we say Richards.
yeah.
Um,
I was educated on that.
And
I
you
said
spell
Richard for years.
oh, really? Yeah, Richard. You guys spell color with a U. For all our US listeners out there, they do things a little differently in Canada, or maybe we do things a little differently down here. But regardless, um, Richard's you, and then you've had a couple of adventures too. So let's talk about those.
Yeah, so I flew out of Surrey on Mother's Day, went home, spent the day with my kids, and then the next day I flew to Quebec for my first trip to the Richard factory. So I went there and met up with Phil from PRC Taping, and we were prepping for tool demos for Home Depot.
Okay.
So we did that together. We got everything nailed down with, so we had right now Marshalltown is in Home Depot and Richard's trying to sell their tools there. So we had
Okay.
to show um so Richard like showed like the price difference, blah blah blah, but me and Phil were brought there to prep for Home Depot to come in for a presentation.
Okay.
We could show them how efficient and good quality their tools are, whether it's their knives or their trowels, their hawks. Literally, I stand behind all their tools. They're a
Why?
phenomenal company because
Why?
they stand they last for forever. If you take care, I have my original Richard tools from 15 years ago
Okay.
that are still in one piece. You know, like they're phenomenal tools. I think that they've helped me become a better finisher with how they're made, you know, like the perfect flex and all that.
Yeah.
So we did that. And then I flew home, and within a couple of weeks, I flew back to Quebec, and it was game day. Home Depot was coming in. They brought in the president and the Gilberts came as well. We all three of us, me,
Okay.
Kayla, and Allison, flew from Edmonton to Quebec together, and we met Phil there, and we went for 3 days.
Was
And
that the first time you had met Phil?
the first time I went to Quebec, it was, yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's he's a nice guy.
So I was really out of my comfort zone. I was very nervous. Like there was a lot
Yeah.
to this trip. And another moment where I was like, how did I get here? You know, like how is this real life? And Phil being there
Wait,
made me
wait, I
feel
can
so
answer
much
that
better.
because you're a badass, Teak.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Anyways, continue on.
Phil just made me feel so much better. Like it was almost like I somewhat like knew him from being on social media, watching him on social media. And I find it was the same in Surrey with all you guys. Like when I met you, I'm like, what's up, brother? Like
Yeah.
super excited and comfortable. And that's because of the Drywall podcast and social media and becoming friends and like just getting along with everyone's been so nice. So then we went over all the tools and exactly what we were gonna do, and then the Home Depot people came in and that was a really cool experience. We did our tool demos and showed them the quality of Richard and what they would be signing up for, and that went off. It went perfectly, and then I came home and then I was off to Ontario to go do a
Uh,
job.
and then you did a job with Sean.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Ontario.
All right. So you worked with Sean and Durotech
Yeah, I'm Whippy Drywall.
and Whitby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super cool dudes.
He, like, Steve is one of the best finishers I've ever met.
Why?
He,
Why do you think that?
his troweling, like, I like to think like I'm pretty good at troweling. Like,
Yeah.
I find puts me to shame. Like he's so fast, he's efficient, like he nails it every single time. Like I don't know if that's what, because I'm not sure on people's perspective, but I think it would be comparable for when some people see me on the trowel. Like I try to be like very graceful with it and purposeful. And for me, that's what it was like watching him on the trowel. I was just like, wow, like you are a phenomenal finisher. Like I gained so much respect for him through that trip. And that's what I was saying earlier about like, do you think that women are better finishers?
Yeah.
Not when it comes to people like Steve from Whitby
Okay.
Drywall. Like he is a phenomenal finisher.
I feel that way when I watch Phil, when I watch
Yeah,
his
Phil on his
social media.
knives.
Yeah, he's just so fluid and very purposeful with every movement,
Yeah,
which I appreciate. It's like there's no inefficiencies in the movements, you know. You
yeah.
watch somebody can skim a butt joint with 13 different movements, and then somebody can skim a butt joint with four different movements, you know, and one's obviously more efficient than the other, how you're skimming that butt joint. Very cool. Did you do any other adventures after the adventure in Ontario with those guys?
No, I haven't yet. I might have something in the works right now, but it's very early in the works. But I'm hoping to get out there and go out to Ohio and go do a job with Cam.
Very cool. Very cool. And then we got to get you doing fresco at some point.
I loved it. Doing that in Surrey was such a nice break from drywalling. Like,
I have this big job here. It's been slow here, and I've been focusing a lot on product, but I know Chad's got some stuff. Cam's always doing fresco. There is a big one here, and you're definitely on the list for coming down. But I mean, I don't know how I want to work it yet, but like people can do as much or as little. It'd be fun to have Cam and Sean and down here as well. So
yeah,
I have to figure that out, but more will be revealed on that. I'm looking at a small fire. I'm still doing like little fireplaces and stuff, but yeah, yeah, it's fun.
I think that fresco is a phenomenal opportunity for people to get more familiar with the trowel.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't use the trowel until we started doing texture in Colorado. So with the pool trowel and the hawk, I mean, the way I learned, we always used a pan and knife. And using a pan and knife and a hawk and trowel, I think, is like a superpower. Like,
Mhm.
you know, I think if I went back now, I would probably be more proficient with a trowel. Like I
Yeah.
would probably do it hawk and trowel method. Maybe with corner bead, I would run it with my knives. I don't know.
Well,
I
notice
don't.
like for example, Sean, his troweling has come a long way, and I think it has a lot to do with him working with Fresco Harmony.
Hmm.
You know, it's a
Yeah, I
great way
agree.
to gain your skills a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. Steph Abbott, Teak Interiors out of Red Deer. Um, I mean, we've probably covered it, but what is the most substantial shift that you've made in your finishing besides the bazooka that you felt like wouldn't work very well, but now you wouldn't do it any other way?
Besides the bazooka, um,
But you're saying, I mean, if you had a list, I mean, we already covered it, but the bazooka was pretty revolutionary for you realizing, oh, this tool is very efficient.
oh.
I'm gonna like use this, you know.
You know, since I went to Surrey, I have switched up the way that I box my flats. Like before, I was doing it with 10s and 12s. But
Okay.
now, since I went to Surrey and tried out the 14-inch box, I 14-inch box all my jobs. And I know that people are like, oh, it's so much extra sanding. Like, why would you do that? Try
Hmm.
it. If you try the 14-inch box, you probably won't do it any other way after that. Like
Okay.
the finish is perfect. It's exactly what I'm looking for. And then like my trowel, my go-to trowel that I use on every job for butts and bead is a 14-inch. So everything just looks perfect being the exact same size in the end. And like I realize it gets painted, but I like things when I walk away to look perfect and
Yeah.
uniform and so I highly advise people try the 14-inch box.
Yeah, I used to use a 10 and a 12. But that's just because maybe there wasn't a 14 or nobody ever introduced it to me. But it just makes sense that if you're busting the butts and bands out 2 inches farther, it's going to look better.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, it's going to be flatter and it's not taking any more time. So do you go 12 and 14
Yeah.
instead of 10 and 12?
Yeah. So when I'm taping, I know it takes a little bit longer, but when I'm taping, I make sure that that bevel is full right from when I lay that tape so that when I'm running my 12 and 14, like it's running flat, right? Like it's not filling any of that bevel at all. And I find that that helps a lot too for the finished product when it comes to like shrinkage.
Oh, so you would say you run your bands tighter.
Yeah, like, well, like, you know how you can run your bazooka and I wipe with a 8-inch Richard knife.
Okay.
Personally, that's just what I like to use. I find that
Okay.
the 6-inch takes too much mud out from under the tape, and an eight
Yeah.
inch not only floats flat, it fills the bevel at the same time.
Okay. All right. And the bevel can be also the a term is the factory
Yeah,
edge or
sorry.
the recess too. People call it recess down here. But
Yeah,
you're basically filling that on your tape coat, and so on your 12-inch box run, you're running it pretty tight.
yeah,
Yeah, probably a criticism of the automatic tools is that they hump out and there's if you are running your box correctly, then you can avoid that,
yeah. Yeah,
you know.
like you're avoiding the crown, right? Like I've had
Yeah.
so many people comment on my videos like, why aren't you starting off with an 8-inch box? It's like, because why do you need to? You're going to crown that joint. Like you're not, I don't understand how so many people, or they're like, we can see your tape when I'm running a butt joint. It's like you can't see the tape. Like when it dries, everything is white. But I'm
Hmm.
not building a mountain on these tapes, right? I want it to be flat. I'm not crowning anything. You put your trowel up to it, it's flat. And
It makes
like,
sense to me. The farther you break it out, the flatter it's going to be. You run your corner bead then with 14 because you do with trowel. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
used to run.
so
I don't think I ran all my corner bead with 10 and 12. But I
yeah,
always was breaking it out. They made fun of me in Sierra Vista when I worked down there because they were doing 8 and 10 and I was doing 10 and 12. I thought it looked better.
yeah.
12 and 14 would look even better. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
I think so. Well, I also like so I personally just, this is just my style. I coat my corner beads 3 times.
Okay. Yeah.
I do not want them to be hollow at all. And
Hmm.
so I use my 14 on all 3 coats. So when I start off, I'm only using like 8 inches of my trowel. The rest of it is just hanging off the side of it. And then every coat, I'm just going. So when I run it, I run the mud exactly where the first layer was. But then when I feather it out, it's pushing it out an inch past the existing coat.
Okay.
And it does that every single time. So at the end of it, I'm not like stacking my mud. I'm still like feathering it out and making it
Yeah.
nice and all that.
I think that's probably a trial technique versus knife technique. Knives are a little different when you go to put the mud on and feather. But yeah, there's different ways to do it. It's pretty interesting, you
Yeah.
know. The you Canadians, I think, still are extremely good finishers. And I know that from West Coast to East Coast in the United States, I know that the Canadian finishers are known for their amazing finishing ability, probably mostly because you guys don't do any texture up there.
Yeah, we don't do any
You have to
texture.
finish good. Down here, you can get away with a little bit more, but also, Pearl of Wisdom.
Pearl of wisdom. Well, I think I'll bring it back to Instagram and just give people one more tip that I forgot to say earlier, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So when you're going to post your video on Instagram, one thing that is extremely beneficial to help you get more reach is to use trending audio. So to know if it's trending audio, you look at the top of the video, and if there's a little check mark, that means it's trending audio. And also you can click on that and it'll take you through the top like 10 to 20 trending audios that you can pick right off there. But so once you've, that's not really my tip, but once you pick your whatever song in the world you want to choose, right? Before you go to press post, after you've added your caption, your hashtags, your tags, and all that jazz. At the very bottom, this is on mine anyways. I'm not sure if it's the same on everyone. It says share on Facebook, and it's not talking about your personal Facebook. It's talking about whether the music you've chose is allowed to be shared on
Oh, okay.
Facebook or if it's unavailable for Facebook. So
Okay.
some trending audios you choose or just regular audio, it is not available to be shared onto Facebook. And
Okay.
if you post a video and that um option says unavailable, you are robbing yourself from views. Like sometimes you're missing out on millions of views if you're using an audio that isn't, because Instagram and Facebook are connected, right? So they're playing our reels on
Yep.
Facebook.
Yep.
And it's cool because if you look at your video, it'll tell you your reach from Instagram, and then right below that, it'll tell you your reach from Facebook. And
Okay.
a lot of my views come from Facebook. Like they
See,
don't even,
and that's, I want to add too that people that are poo-pooing Facebook, it's just ridiculous. Like, there's a lot of people on Facebook that don't have Instagram accounts. A lot. Like, and the drywall groups also. There is so many drywall groups, junkies, drywall is worldwide, drywall nation. All of these groups are really powerful tools. You might not get a bunch of likes, but if you post something on those groups on Facebook, you have a ton of eyes on your content for
yeah,
sure.
I'm not even sure if my content's being played through those pages because I don't have Facebook. But with me hashtagging FYP for you, hashtag FYP, hashtag for you, and hashtag reels, it helps me get my videos onto Facebook's FYP. So
Okay.
I can look and I can see I've got 1.2 million views from Facebook. It might say you have 30,000 views from Instagram, but if I would have chose an audio that was unavailable to be shared on Facebook, I would have lost out on 1.2 million views. That's why it's so important that you make sure that your audio is allowed. It says allow or
Okay.
unavailable. If it says unavailable, don't even post it. Change your audio to something that says allow and then full send.
Love it. That's a great tip. Thank you so much for being on the Drywall podcast again today. This was a good one. You were comfortable. Not that you weren't comfortable last time. Your previous episode is one of my favorites. It's fantastic. Also, if you get a chance, go listen to that episode. I'll probably post it in the intro and outro of this. And what a great episode. I think we covered a lot of good ground. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
No, I'm just super thankful to be back on here, and I'm grateful for all the opportunities, and like just for the people out there that I see you out there like posting consistently on Instagram and trying your best, and just don't give up. Just keep going, like, and hopefully a few of my tips will hopefully help some people to get the traction they're looking for, and do your research.
Yeah, welcome to a helpful episode of the Drywall podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Steph. I hope you have a fantastic day, and we will talk soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Bye. Huge shout out to Steph Abbott for being with us on the Drywall podcast today. What a pleasure. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. If you ever get a chance to meet Steph or see her at some event, I highly encourage you to do so. This was an absolute pleasure. Join us every Friday for new and exciting episodes on the Drywall podcast. Next week, we have Jason Marshall of Jams Drywall. We talk about maybe not getting paid from a contractor and how that simply is not okay. Today's episode of the Drywall podcast was brought to you by Fresco Harmony, making walls better since 2004. You can find out more information about Fresco Harmony on our website, www.frescoharmony.com, or head over to CSR Building Supplies for information there on Fresco Harmony as well. You can also purchase Fresco Harmony from their website. Curious about sponsoring the Drywall podcast, you can reach out to me directly at info@frescoharmony.com, and I would be super happy to talk to you about that. Thank you so much for joining me on the Drywall podcast today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I sure do like that stuff, and I hope that all of you have an amazing weekend doing whatever you're doing. And if there's one thing that I could hope for you to remember, it is to keep drywalling.